Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions regarding this watch. So back in 2004, Jaeger-LeCoultre and Aston Martin launched co-branded watches that were a cut above the usual wheels and watches co-branding. So there have been a lot of watches that were simply labeled with an automotive logo. Some existing model was adapted, an upcharge was applied, and watch collectors were never impressed. What was more interesting on the Jaeger-LeCoultre Aston Martin front was that first there was a real enduring relationship, as Jaeger instruments had been used in the dashboard of Aston Martin cars dating back to the 1920s. And for the first time, it would be the Aston Martin logo appearing on a Jaeger or Jaeger-LeCoultre product, so there was real shared heritage there. Second, Jaeger-LeCoultre created a unique model line for the Amvox watches. Rather than branding something that already existed, clean sheet designs were issued, and in most cases, the co-branding, where it occurred, was very subtle. So this was a cut above, both in terms of planning and investment. This is the Amvox 1, the first model in the collaboration launched back in 2004. There's several versions of this watch, but this one is stainless steel. And at the time this came out, the tribute to Polaris design hadn't been conceived, which is why this watch, in so many respects, looks like a modern revival of the Polaris 1968 design. So let's jump into it. In steel, 42 millimeters in diameter, 15.2 millimeters thick, 47.2 millimeters from lug to lug, with a 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. It's an easy watch to wear. It's not too broad, but it does have strong lug profiles, so I'd recommend this for a wrist of 15 centimeters circumference or larger. My wrist, for reference, is 16. A lot of the thickness of this watch is a dramatically boxed and cambered sapphire that is designed to look like the Polaris's plexiglass. So you can see, if you just take a look at the edge of the case, it's not that high. So a dress cuff can ramp up over this more easily than you imagine, and certainly any jacket will be able to wear it well. The strap is calfskin, and as you can see on the bottom, it is also calfskin. No crimping, no gouging. This is a wonderful Bridge of Weir leather that is correct to the model, and then it's a matte finish with a lot of bolstering to give it volume, a monotone stitch, and then a sheer cut edge that's lacquered for refinement. And these came with a matching folding clasp that have a blasted interior. So you can see this is a watch that was launched before 2006, because in 2006, JLC debuted its double folding clasp. The triple crowns will be immediately recognizable to Polaris fans, and you'll notice that they're a little bit different. There's no quadrille or super compressor segmentation of these crowns. They're all JL branded, whereas on the original, the Polaris used a case that was fairly common in the dive watch space in the 60s called the super compressor from Irvin Piquerez, and so most of those featured two crowns, one for setting and winding the watch and the other for an internal rotating bezel, whereas the Vulcain Cricket Nautical and the JLC Polaris, they actually had three crowns because they also had an alarm function. So what we've got here is a center crown that turns an internal rotating bezel. Now this isn't a dive bezel because it's not luminescent, but it is a useful timing reference. And I often find bezels handier than a chronograph. They're easier to read and they don't come with the downstream maintenance costs. Now there's another crown up at the top. You see, when I pull this out, I can set the alarm. I can also wind the alarm when it's in its flush position. Down at the bottom, I have a crown that allows me to hack the seconds. It is a hacking seconds watch, and then it features an unconventional quickset because this is the JLC caliber 918. It does not have a true quickset, and let me show you how this works. You roll through the date change. 918 is an older caliber that traces its origins to the late 60s in the caliber 916. So you need to back to about 10 p.m., roll through midnight again, and so this is how you adjust the date on this caliber 918 manufacturer movement. Notice it does have a stop seconds function. We're going to go back to the setting of the alarm. Let's take a look at the loom shot, because this is important. It is possible to set the alarm and see the alarm time in the dark. And as you could hear, it is a very vocal alarm. Now on the back, again, a tribute to the Polaris, we have this sort of double layer resonator system where there are perforations that allow the sound of the alarm to emanate from the case. But you will note that this has 14 perforations, and I believe the original Polaris has 16, so some changes were made and liberties were taken. Also, instead of the diver on the reverse side, we have the Aston Martin winged logo, and this is why I say the branding is very subtle. Other points of interest on the case include the triple crowns themselves and then the lugs, which are squared off on their ends, and then they have a soft bevel and profile with a thin mid-case. The case is very similar to the Polaris, and remember the Polaris 65 and Polaris 68 were made from 65 through 70, though some prototypes may have issued as early as 1963. So this is a design from the 1960s. The dial does include some elements of Polaris design, most notably the font used on the numeral scale and the controversial Calypso-style hand, something that may or may not have been a feature of historic Polaris watches in small volume. But what you'll notice is that there's really very little calibration at the bottom of the dial, and then this radially arrayed set of numerals is a bit unusual. It's both a tribute to the Polaris and designed to look like a clock, a tachometer, especially a speedometer in an Aston Martin car, where the needle would come to a rest more or less at, let's say, 7:15, and just past 4 would be where it maxes out at maximum. So this is designed to look like an instrument, a tachometer or a speedometer on a dashboard. And then you could see that we have applique indices, but only for the bezel, and those exist outboard. The movement that's inside is the 918. So automatic winding, bidirectional rotor winding. It's got a 45-hour power reserve, 22 pivot joules, a 4 hertz beat rate, the hacking seconds function, the semi-quick set, and the alarm. And the alarm in this watch is a big upgrade over past alarms because instead of having a striker hitting the edge of the case, there is a free hanging resonator and then this chambered case back that allows it to be much, much louder. And so we also have a few refinements, such as a 5 ATM water resistance, so better than a standard dress watch, but with push-down crown, I don't recommend you swim with this. And then the Master 1000 hours control. So while this movement may have roots in the late 60s, the 1000 hours control does put it through a modern battery of tests, including 6-position, fully cased-up chronometry testing over 1,000 hours, 41.6 days, also including water resistance, power reserve, winding efficiency, and total function and durability. So this is a test that goes beyond the scope of simple COSC movement testing over 2 weeks. This is a really cool watch, and critically, it's a fun car watch co-brand that does not require you to be an Aston Martin enthusiast. Because take a look at the dial. Do you see any wing logos here? There's your answer. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.